Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, everybody, to episode 19 of our beauty class, St. Joan of Arc. Do you know whether or not you are in God's grace? Joan, if I am not, may God put me there, and if I am, may God so keep me. I should be the saddest creature in the world if I knew I were not in his grace. I am not afraid. I was born to do this. Act, and God will act. Since God had commanded it, it was necessary that I do it. Since God had commanded it, even if I had 100 fathers and mothers, even if I had been a king's daughter, I would have gone nevertheless. I would rather die than do something which I know to be a sin or to be against God's will. Of the love or hatred God has for the English, I know nothing, but I do know that they will all be thrown out of France except those who die there. All battles are first won or lost in the mind. It is better to be alone with God. His friendship will not fail me, nor his counsel, nor his love. In his strength, I will dare and dare and dare until I die. And 6 quotes, all quotes from Joan of Arc. I'd like to return to the first one really quickly. Do you know if you're in a state of grace? These inquisitors, as part of St. Joan of Arc's trial, are trying to trip her up. If I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may God so keep me. I'd be the saddest creature in the world if I knew I were not in his grace. What a beautiful sentiment. You know, we think about often talking about not judging, not saying this person is good or bad, perhaps applying that same rule to ourselves. Of course, we are to do an examination of conscience, to be aware of our own faults, especially in anticipation of confession. But it's like they're trying to trip her up, and if she's like, well, yeah, I'm not in a state of grace, well, then you're a charlatan. All these supposed visions and stuff that you're claiming God is commanding you to do, and sending St. Michael and St. Catherine of Alexandria and these different saints to shepherd you. Well, that's obviously false. And if you claim that you are in a state of grace, well, how dare you? How presumptuous of you. What a beautiful answer. It's like when they tell Christ, where does your authority come from? And Christ responds, well, tell me, where did John the Baptist's authority come from? And they can't answer, well, neither will I tell you. It's beautiful. What a beautiful imitation of Christ in this young girl, La Pucelle, as she's called in French, the maid. On that note, before we kind of begin, as this being part of our preamble introduction, a lot of the French names we're going to be pronouncing like English style. It's an American class. I'm not a huge fan of doing like the over-the-top French accent. You know what I mean? Like I always talk about this with Spanish and stuff, and it's like, just say your name is Ricardo Martinez, right? Instead of like Ricardo Martinez. Like just say it's Ricardo Martinez if you're speaking your Spanish, right? So it's the same thing. We're going to be pronouncing things with an English accent, with an American accent. The cathedral at Reims, R-E-I-M-S, is going to figure in centrally here. It sounds like it looks like it could be pronounced, Reims in English. Of course, it's not that way. But I want to make a French announcement to all the listeners of maple syrup history. We have tons of fans in Montreal. I've mentioned this in this class many times. I want to say right now that je suis profondément convaincu que la langue française c'est la plus belle langue dans l'histoire de l'humanité, n'est simplement pas dans le monde contemporain aujourd'hui, mais pendant toute l'histoire de l'humanité. Mais encore une fois, ces classes, les lieux de ces classes, c'est aux États-Unis. Je suis un Américain et je vais prononcer tout cet discours dans l'accent anglais et je suis désolé par ça, mais je n'envie pas à utiliser de cet accent français forcé. Et voilà, mais encore une fois, merci pour votre soutien. Merci mes amis pendant tout le Canada francophone. Et merci tout le monde. Bienvenue à cette émission de Saint-Jean d'Arc. Episode 19, Beauty, Joan of Arc. First thing I have to talk about, I started the class with quotes from Joan of Arc, I think for an obvious reason, like a duh reason, right? I mean, getting at who this woman was, more accurately, who this girl was. Before I go into my notes, let me just freestyle on her story. It's often good to begin in the end, right? Begin with the end. What is the story of Joan of Arc? Joan of Arc is born in 1412, dies in 1431. The dates of her life are 1412 to 1431. At the age of 19, she is burned at the stake. She's rehabilitated not too long after that by kind of official ecclesiastical inquiry and that kind of thing. In the 1450s, she's not canonized a saint until by Benedict XV in 1920. Long time. Today's, this grand patroness of France. There's, even before her official canonization, Thérèse of Lisieux, the little flower, there's like photos of her dressed up as Joan of Arc. Like these young French girls in French festivals. Like, she was a longtime folk hero. In fact, Felix Dupanloup, the Bishop of Orléans, France, the city of which she is obviously associated with, especially the siege of Orléans that we're going to talk about today, he starts publishing material kind of in her defense, all that kind of stuff, growing her legendary status. Well, that's long after her, her death. After being burned at the stake in 1431, she's rehabilitated in the 1450s, canonized 500 years after her death, basically. She's only been a saint for the past, 100 years. She claims to have visions from the time she's a little girl, goes to lead France in battle, absolutely epic boss general. It's not just, she's there with her standards. She's one of the kind of encouraging, dominant voices, pushing the king forward. Her whole mission is to crown the king, Charles VII, the Dauphin, exactly, who is like, and we're going to talk about this succession problem right now, and we're going to talk about the larger military conflict. Here's the voice as a young girl. I'm going to lead the French in battle against the invading English. The whole deal is to crown the heir apparent as the legitimate king of France, Charles VII, at the Cathedral of Reims, R-E-I-M-S. Cathedral of Reims, and the pronunciation on that is actually brutal. That is hard. That is a hard word to pronounce. I will admit that. Once that happens, and of course it is accomplished in the course of her campaigns, when she, I don't want to say takes command, but takes to the field and all that kind of stuff, she basically will claim in the wake of this coronation, God's will has been fulfilled. That was my whole duty. And yet she's an absolute dog for the competition, the fight, the battle. She wants to push. All these guys are like, she's like, let's back off the English. She wants to kick every Englishman out. Remember, I'll read that quote again. St. Joan of Arc, of the love or hatred God has for the English, I know nothing. But I do know they will all be thrown out of France, except those who die here. So, end quote. So she's absolutely solicitous. Why is she so beloved by a lot of French atheists, secular French people? Because she's very, very hyper nationalistic, pro-France, the country itself. Talk about the French Revolution, one of the most anti-Catholic things in world history. This is obviously centuries after Joan of Arc, 250 years after Joan of Arc's time. But the French Revolution, the Marseillaise and La Patrie, and all that, the kind of love of the nation. Long before that, Joan of Arc is absolutely in equivalency to her holy status as a venerated saint. She is a psycho-patriot. I say psycho as a compliment, hyper, to the max patriotism. So a lot of French people like her. It's not just the Catholic crowd, even very secular, atheistic, separation of church and state, 1905 laicity French people who are even sadly anti-clerical love Joan of Arc as a kind of French patriot.
The revolution was anti-Catholic?
The French Revolution was... In 1789 to 1799, way after this time, 207 years or whatever, Joan of Arc, the French Revolution is very anti-clerical, anti-Catholic, yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Joan of Arc is still, very much, royalist, way before that, 207 years. you want something funny? We are closer to the time of George Washington today than Joan was to the Revolution. It's a long time ago. There's a big difference. Like Joan of Arc, you think, oh, it's happened so long ago, it's all one. No, they're very much different in time. What I'm saying is that today France is France is still the eldest daughter of the church, very Catholic country, very atheist country too. Even French atheists love her for her kind of patriotism. Joan of Arc hears visions as a young girl. How crazy is this? As a high school junior, she's leading the army. She's a 17-year-old girl, leading the army. It's crazy. Like, this is Alexander the Great type stuff, who at age 16 led the right flank for Philip II, his father in Macedonia, in the 4th century BC. Joan of Arc is epic. At the front, carrying the standard, pushing the king forward. Let's get the British. Joan will be captured in a battle. Joan will undergo heavy trial, like 15 different individual kind of inquisitions, and she's finally burned at the stake. The official reason why she's burned at the stake is, well, one of them was that she was wearing men's... burned as a heretic because, and we're going to talk about the alliances in a second, but some of these French guys in Burgundy were allied with the English, and she's tried in this court at Rouen, Reun, this city that was kind of had this, anti-Charles VII sentiment. She's tried by an ecclesiastical court, accused of heresy for not recanting that she had these visions. And she's like, I'm not going to say I didn't have the visions. St. Michael did speak to me. And that's getting to where the last kind of part of our preamble of why what she did was so beautiful. I think you see where I'm going with this. Like the courage under fire, grace under fire. She's not going to renounce the truth. 2 reasons she's executed: heresy and that she's wearing men's clothing. Well, she said, I'm wearing men's clothing because women on a battlefield can easily be, sexually assaulted, attacked, whatever, if they're wearing a dress or whatever. And the scumbag people that are holding her captive, this is seriously like really gross and dumb. They're like, oh, well, if she wears men's clothing again, we're going to kill her, like, for doing this. And they put her in a cell and only give her men's clothing to wear. Okay, I mean, it's like, yeah, you're forcing her to do that because you want to, anyways. So, and at the end of her kind of whole ordeal, like, she will, kind of hold out to the end. We'll talk about some, I don't want to call it waffling, but at one point, like, she recants. And then, it's like she has a vision that says, do not trade your soul for the truth. And so she says, I'd rather die than be imprisoned, these, false pretenses. We'll get to that story in a second. Why is Joan of Arc's story beautiful? Well, I would say the idea of following one's purpose in life. This class is about the good, the true, and the beautiful. Catherine of Siena or Teresa of Avila, I always confuse them. They're like, sisters in terms of doctors of the church or whatever. And I think a lot is cross-pollinated, attributed to either one. Like something Teresa of Avila said, Catherine actually said, whatever. Same thing here. I don't know who said this, but one of them said, if you become what you're meant to be, you'll set the world on fire. A lot of people have heard that. Joan of Arc is beautiful because she became what she was supposed to be. So it would seem. God was calling her to a mission to crown the rightful king. Talk about, Christ is king. There's an order. Jesus Christ, we read in Mass yesterday, the name at which every tongue will confess, every knee shall bend. So if God has established order on earth, lesser order, we're bound to follow that too. We're not supposed to support puppet kings and fake tyrants and whatever. So her mission is to crown the rightful king and expel these English guys from, and she even says here, she's saying, I'm not saying that God hates the English or loves the English. Joan is very humble and like, I'm not saying, oh yeah, I'm so righteous. No, I just have this mission to get the English out. That's what I'm going to do. So it's very beautiful to how single-minded she is. Single-minded, focused on her goal. Not, I don't know, let's have a committee meeting. Like, she's focused on her goal. Extraordinarily brave. And I would say if you're looking for like true feminism, true female empowerment, here it is. This is not a woman like, every man is evil, whatever, kind of like modern cliches, men versus women, battle of the sexes type stuff. It's just like, here's honestly a woman, a young girl, a high school girl, empowered by God, by his grace, to become one of the most, amazing military commanders for a very brief time. Her success, and it shows, like, God gives her the grace to have the successes needed to accomplish her mission, which is to get Charles VII crowned, and she does. And then she fails pretty soon after that. Please note, last spoiler, her great success is the siege of Orléans. to anglify the siege of Orleans, for which New Orleans is named, right? The siege of Orléans is her great success, but then she fails at the siege of Paris. Fails. She's going to be wounded later on, going back out into battle. She's very hungry for the fight and captured, and the rest is history. And we're going to talk about that. But I think she's beautiful for a lot of these reasons of fulfilling the mission God gave her. Yeah.
That's no capture.
She falls. There's two factions. Let's talk about that right now. So the faction that she's part of is the Armagnac faction. Armagnac. The Armagnac faction. Armagnac, Armagnac faction.
I thought that was some kind of very expensive wine.
Maybe it is as well. I mean, sure. Again, Orléans, this French city, is world famous today for New Orleans, Louisiana, right? I mean, it may have something to do with a particular vintage as well. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about wine, but it's very possible it is. Armagnac faction. These guys are the supporters of the Duke of Orléans, the rightful king, Charles. That's Joan's side, the Armagnac faction. Brad, the larger umbrella is French versus British. And we're going to talk about what this battle is called in a second. I've been holding this back. People know, some people might know, but I'll give you the whole information. But the larger battle is French versus British. But there's French factions. The Armagnac are fighting the Burgundies, the Duke of Orléans versus the Duke of Burgundy. So the Burgundy supporters, who are allied with the English in some ways, are working against Joan and the Armagnacs and Charles VII. So when she fought, eventually I'll read you the account of her falling into capture, but she's tried by a French ecclesiastical court, technically her own people, right? Who want to deny Charles VII the rightful crown and are looking to place that crown elsewhere. And so to illegitimize Joan and say she doesn't have a mission from God, she's a usurper. The British for a long time, the 1600s, just looked at her as a witch. She's a witchcraft, evil, whatever. Typical kind of there's a lot of geopolitical intrigue in this. A lot of geopolitical intrigue and stuff that cannot be discounted. It's not just some kind of, it's not just a religious story. A lot of geopolitical stuff. Here's the larger thing, guys. This is all part of the 100 Years' War. It's actually the 116 Years' War. The 100 Years' War is 1337 to 1453. 1337. 1337 to 1453. 116 real years. It's called the 100 Years' War. It's France versus Britain. Joan is born in 1412, dies in 1431. Her life parallels the following thing. The British have early success, one of the most famous battles in European world history, the Battle of Agincourt, 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 Agincourt. The Battle of Agincourt is October 25th, 1415. Joan is a 3-year-old girl when this battle takes place. The British have a lot of early success. And especially following Agincourt, 1415 to 1429, the British are, while getting worn down now, fighting. It's not a continuous battle. Things break it up. The Black Plague breaks this battle up at one time. The 100 Years' War, amazingly, really juxtaposed along a lot of important other historical events. The Black Plague, 1347, 1350. The war ends in 1453. That's when Constantinople falls to the Turks. A lot of historical stuff is going on in this time period. The British are getting kind of war fatigued, tired, are we going to continue on or not? But the British have had kind of early success. The British are trying to put their guy on the throne, a guy named Henry VI. Henry VI. The English are saying he's also the King of France. They're trying to unite these monarchies. Spoiler, Joan's great years, 1429, she will crown Charles VII. Even after her death in 1431, the French will seize the momentum and they will win the 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War is the reason why there's no British stuff on the European continent. Why the British are across the channel. I think Calais is a little kind of like pale, little small section that remains in the hands of the British for a little while. But the British are, to make a long story short, sent back across the channel. And the claimants to the French throne sundered. So you see why French patriots love La Pucelle, the maid. She's seen as like, they're saying, for us Catholics, like the religious stuff is everything. God bless St. Joan of Arc. St. Joan of Arc, pray for us. They're like, I'm not worried about the religious stuff. I love how patriotic she is. She kicked English butt and saved the French nation, right? And even in her death, even with her death, her beautiful dying words, she's repeating Jesus, Jesus over and over again as the flames consume her on the stake. Even her heroic saintly death, militarily speaking, the progress she had made in getting Charles to coronation, the successful siege of Orléans, the breaking down of the English momentum, in addition to the British war fatigue in this very long, remember it's 116 years when it's all said and done. It's crazy. Imagine if there was a war right now that was in its 115th year for us, right? That means it began in 1909. Imagine. There was a war that was broken up by some things, but going on since 1909. It's crazy, right? How long, 1908. The 100 Years' War ended in 2008, began in 1892. That's insane to think about in today's time stretch. Joan will, even in her death, her life and death is seen as kind of a turning point in French, just secular political history. Forget even the religious stuff that we're going to talk about now. But is everyone clear on all those kind of things? Okay, very good. Having all that kind of background in place, I guess, to the actual boom, 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 boom narrative. Joan of Arc, 1412 to 1431. She's born in a city, Domremy, Domremy, small village in the Meuse Valley, northeast of France. Her parents are Jacques d'Arc and Isabelle Romée. She has 3 brothers and a sister. Her father was a peasant farmer. 50 acres of land, and he works as some kind of village official as well to supplement. Just, poor, salt of the earth, Palouse lentil farmer family kind of thing.
Well, that would have been pretty substantial landholding, wouldn't you think?
50 acres seems pretty good. I agree with you. He's called a peasant farmer, but 50 acres, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not like
he's not a feudal.
in a hovel.
Yeah, he's not a feudal serf. I mean, that's pretty great.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Excellent. No, thank you for that. You're right. It seems like, okay, he's a peasant farmer. We are talking about the 14th century. Everyone is living pretty simply. Even, what does it mean to have kingly indulgence at this time and whatever? Like, it's like no one is, anyways, right. 50 acres of land does not seem like, as you said, he's living in a hovel. It seems like he's not doing bad for himself, perhaps. And maybe with the side gig as his village official, he has some kind of decent setup for his family. Now, politics are afoot. Remember, she's born in 1412. 100 Years' War has been going on since 1337. She's born into the middle of this great great contest. In the year 1407, 5 years before Joan was born, the Duke of Burgundy orders the assassination of the Duke of Orléans. Remember these two factions, the House of Burgundy against the Armagnac. The Armagnac is Joan of Arc, Charles VII. This precipitates this civil war. These two rival factions in France, of which the English are going to be all too happy to take advantage of. This can in some way spur on, the internal divisions. Henry V, the successor of the Sixth, the guy who will be the rival claimant to the French throne in the back end of this story, invades in 1415. That's when you get the Battle of Agincourt, English dominance in France, all that kind of thing. The French king is a final kind of background point here. Charles VI. remember, Joan is trying to get Charles VII soon, when she enters the story, crowned king, is considered, for lack of a better word, crazy. He suffers with all kind of different, and God bless him. Today we think about, it's beautiful, the modern awareness of like, mental health and all that, getting someone help. Back then, he's just a crazy guy, bouts of mental illness, he can't be trusted. He's often rendered incapacitated to rule, all this kind of stuff. And so Charles VII, the guy, the main king in this story, assumes, as you said, this title of Dauphin, D-A-U-P-H-I-N, heir to the throne, heir apparent. And interestingly, think about like King David in the Bible, right? The ruddy youth who's the runt of the litter, like the seventh brother, right? 4 of his brothers die for him to reach this, Assumption post anyways, in this, rule of primogeniture and, the eldest son. This is the world Joan is born into. A crazy king, incapacitated, the son who's Dauphin, whose brothers who were supposed to rule anyways, all died. He's heir apparent, but who knows? Orléans versus Burgundy, civil war after the assassination of this duke in 1407, which is 5 years before Joan even enters the world. Okay, during her early life, she's, like a normal girl. Household chores, spun wool, helps her father with their animals in the field. Once more adding to this thing you said, like they seem like they're doing pretty good for a peasant family. It's not bad, owning animals, 50 acres of land, great. Her mother provides Joan's religious education. In 1425, Domremy, D-O-M-R-E-M-Y, her city is attacked. Cattle are stolen. People start getting upset, obviously. Think about it. Remember when Moscow was raided by Colfax and they stole our stuff? And we're like, the Colfax question has to be settled. It's kind of, it's obvious stuff. The local people decide we have to expel the British. How's this going to happen? Joan has her first vision after this raid. She later testifies that around the year 1425, as a 13-year-old girl, she starts having her first visions. A figure she identifies as Saint Michael, surrounded by angels, appears to her in the garden. And she, says, think about the seers at Fatima, the angel of peace, and seeing Our Lady, I want to go with you. She testifies to, wanting to leave this world. Think about, Thomas Aquinas. Everything now, after that vision, is like straw that I've written, right? But it seems like, no, God has plans for Joan in this world before she's free to go to the next. She keeps having visions subsequent to this first one when she was 13 years old. Margaret of Antioch, Catherine of Alexandria. Both were known as virgin saints who strove against powerful enemies who were tortured and martyred for their beliefs and preserved virtue until death. Catherine of Alexandria is an awesome story. She's tortured on a spike. The emperor puts her in prison. She converts the whole prison. And then he's like, fine, I'm so fed up with this woman. I'm going to propose marriage. And she says no. And so they behead her. Catherine of Alexandria, it's the Egyptian saint. Joan is you see, there are no coincidences with God. Joan is receiving visions of women who are exactly like what she will become. Virgins, specific, often political mission too, martyrs for the faith. Even though, one can say, Joan of Arc is not killed in odium fide. She's not killed because she's a Catholic. But she is falsely called a heretic. She is calumnized a heretic for refusing to recant, refusing to lie. No, I did have these visions, right? And so she's killed certainly under these evil pretenses of lies and slander made up about her. Joan is seen as a playful, normal child, but also kind of preternaturally devoted and devout. That already as a young girl, she's being noted by her family and people around her for her piety and sincerity in religion and kind of, again, not that she's not a normal young girl and likes to play with her friends and whatever, that's true, but that there is something pious about her, something marked about her. Perhaps God has his mark upon her. And this is easy to say, looking back in hindsight, well, of course, but no, it's people say that there was something different about her, a kind of gravity, a seriousness to her spiritual life. On top of this, guys, There's a prophecy circulating in the French countryside based on the visions of this woman, Marie Robine of Avignon, that there would be an armed virgin who would come forth to save France. Another prophecy, a virgin carrying a banner, would put an end to France's suffering. This is where it gets hilarious.
So she's kind of like John's John the Baptist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So many things, kind of dovetailing. It's a crazy story. I 100%.
What is this woman's name?
Marie Robine of Avignon. Marie, Marie Robine of Avignon. She apparently had these visions again. Private revelation. I submit it to the authority of the church. I don't know if it's legit or not. I 100% in the church's investigation and canonization of her do believe 100% Joan received real visions from St. Michael and the saints. Personal prophecies, I don't know. And this next one is hilarious. There apparently was a prophecy about a virgin carrying a banner that would end France's suffering. Joan is often pictured in armor with her standard. This is attributed to Merlin, the magician from King Arthur's court. So it's like, okay, this is funny, Maybe it's true, I don't know. Tell me what you think about Merlin. But there's some kind of expectation going around. In 1428, she asks her uncle to take her to a nearby town where she petitions a garrison commander, hey, take me under armed escort to see the king. He refuses. Her petition is refused multiple times. We know often people who are monks, who want to be monks, will go to the monastery and are told to wait outside for 1,000,000 years. Show me you really care. You can take the humiliation. Joan is told multiple times no. She keeps coming back. At one time, a soldier is unimpressed with her so much so. Who is this 16-year-old idiot sophomore high school? Take her back and whip her. Give her a good, smack, whatever. People are not, despite now acknowledge the veracity of all these things. She's not oh yeah, Joan of Arc, hero. She's some idiot 16-year-old girl. Tell her to get off social media. She's not the maiden that's going to save France, whatever. So she's just no respect for her whatsoever. Well, eventually she gets an audience with Charles VII. God will not be thwarted in his purpose, right? These things are from God. And that's the beautiful part of her story, the perseverance. It's that fruit of the fifth mystery, the coronation of the Blessed Virgin Mary as Queen of Heaven and Earth, grace of perseverance. Whoever perseveres to the end will be saved. Christ tells us in sacred scripture, keeping the faith, getting on with your mission. That's her whole story. She finally meets Charles VII in early March 1429. This part is hilarious. Charles is I'm going to test her. Exactly. She's some stupid high school, TikTok queen, whatever, visions. Okay. So he pretends to be a beggar and has some other dude as the king. And Joan goes right to the beggar. And she's like, you're Charles. At that point, that opens some eyes. Okay. Maybe she's not, just kind of whatever. Maybe she has some special mission with God. Joan, perseverance, perseverance, perseverance. Even after they think that she's legit, what do they have to do now? You guys know? So now it's not take her away and whip her. We're going to listen to her. Before the army even, what are they going to do? They subject her to a battery of humiliating tests. Gynecological exams to make sure she's a virgin. All this kind of really... So imagine, you're a 17-year-old girl and you are, already and this is what I don't mean to sound like a feminist saying this. I mean just to be honest here. Women at this time perhaps do not have as much social respect as a man, especially a 17-year-old girl. She's some stupid 17-year-old peasant girl. Get her out of here is the general attitude, right? And give her a good smack while you're at it kind of thing, like this guy said. But now it's she recognizes the king is really the king. But now it's to add more humiliations, poor girl. Now it's make sure she's a virgin. Well, she's a peasant girl, so you never know. And she's shepherdess, and we hear about these loose morals in the country. So she's subjected to all these awful kind of gynecological exams. She takes it like a champ. Fine, I don't care. I'm here to serve God. Remember one of her earlier quotes again, I'll read it, right? Since God had commanded it, it was necessary that I do it. Even if I had 100 fathers and mothers or been the king's daughter, I would have done it because God commanded it. I would have gone nonetheless. I would rather die than do something which I know to be a sin. Or another part, I'm not afraid. I was born for this. I don't care. You guys want to do 1,000,000 of these humiliating tests? I mean, joke's on you, shame on you, whatever. She doesn't, say, this is the second time she could have quit. The first time could have been, fine, I'm just a stupid girl, I'm gonna go cry in the corner, woe is me. No. And then, no, I am having visions, I'm gonna persevere. Take me to the king. That's the king. It's not a beggar, you're the king. Oh, eyes open. Well, now we gotta see if you're a virgin. Fine, do all the tests you want. I am a virgin, I'm here to do God's will. Test away. She passes these tests. Yeah, pretty soon she gets involved in the army. Her great victory is during the siege of Orléans. Remember, during this siege, the British have been in control for a long, long time. We're still in the year 1429 is her great year, please note. And she at this time, isn't this hilarious, is 17 years old. Okay, she's not old enough to vote in the 2024 election, but she's old enough to save France. She's a 17-year-old girl. 1429 is her great year. She arrives to Orléans April 29th, 1429, having passed, you could say, 2 tests. The test of being taken seriously, and then these kind of gynecological, awful purity tests. The commander there is known as the Bastard of Orléans, Jean de Dunois. He's the Bastard of Orléans. Joan goes full 17-year-old girl. Hey, hello, it's so great to see you. She's really enthusiastic, right? She's initially treated as just a figurehead. Again, she's a stupid TikTok queen, whatever. Oh, okay. Well, the king says, okay, give her a flag to wave. Let her be cheerleader. This kind of constant disrespect towards her, right? She's not really given formal command or whatever at first, but quickly the troops flock to her standard.
Wow.
Talk about people voting with their feet. Just like Joan could recognize that's the real king, the troops recognize that's our leader. Mm-hmm. That's who God has appointed to get this done. Yeah, she's a 17-year-old girl. Am I going to question God? Just like with King David, right? The run to the litter David guy. She always seems to be present where the fighting is most intense. She's the front of the ranks. And she's pretty soon ordering the commanders on what they should do. Imagine a 17-year-old La Pucelle peasant girl telling people about military strategy. Guess what? It works perfectly. Within a couple days, a week, the siege of Orléans has gone in favor of the French forces. By the French, I mean the true French, the Armagnac faction fighting the Burgundies and the British. To make a long story short, guys, this will lead to the coronation of Charles the Seventh. All right? The entire point of this, the entire deal, the entire import of the siege of Orléans in 1429 is that it will lead to the successful coronation of Charles VII in the cathedral at Reims, R-E-I-M-S. And at that point of coronation, Joan now declares God's will has been done. Okay? God's will has been done, and there's nothing more that I need to that I need to do. However, what I think is so beautiful in her story is how often do we not ask ourselves enough, but what more can I do for God? Well, I said I was going to commit to doing blank for this charity or whatever. What more can I do? That is only a small part of this larger story. What is the accomplishment of crowning the king? I mean, it's a massive accomplishment. It now shows this guy is no longer Dauphin, but he's the legit heir. He's been crowned in the real place, like the rival claimant, the usurper, you can say, Henry VI, is coronated at Notre Dame, the famous one in Paris. But Cathedral of Reims is the cathedral where kings are crowned. The symbolism is enormous. Imagine there's a vacant presidency for 100 years, and some guy succeeds in getting the president installed in the Lincoln Memorial, whatever, symbolically in the seat of power, not the fake government in Western New York or something. It's that kind of deal going on. We're not even going to get into the Avignon papacy and all this guys. There's so much stuff going on historically at this time. Joan wants to keep fighting. There are so many times when they're like, okay, thank you. Our bad. We thought you were TikTok. You're awesome. But go home now, kind of thing. And she's like, no, I want to keep fighting. Joan is one of the leaders of the Siege of Paris. This is after the crowning of Charles VII in September of 1429. This fails. French troops fail to enter, fail to make their way into Paris. Joan is actually wounded during the Siege of Paris, September of 1429. She's shot through the leg by a crossbow. But bounces back because she's awesome. Joan is crazy. When she's in captivity, she like twice jumps from a tower. And they're like, were you trying to kill yourself? She's like, of course I wasn't trying to kill myself. I was trying to escape the English. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, you jumped from the tower. You're nuts. And she's like, so? I said, yeah. And I said a prayer before. I don't care. She's awesome that way. She's like, I just trusted in God. I just jumped from the tower. And she's fine. Like, she's an amazing, be it done to you according to your faith. St. Joan of Arc, pray for us. A lot of people in the court hate her. Why do they hate her? What makes people hate people more than anything else? It's always the same thing.
Envy.
Exactly. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, Barb. Envy, jealousy. There's nothing else. It's not envy plus. It's only ever envy. I am angry. This stupid girl from Central City High School, sophomore year. This stupid, dumb TikTok cheerleader on the JV team. That she's the Queen of France, basically. She's the best general. I hate this. Don't they know how important I am? Down with her. Yeah, exactly. It's just typical jealousy, right? The court doesn't like her. What's sad, I don't want to talk trash on Charles VII, but I'm going to talk trash on Charles VII.
He wasn't much of a leader, was he?
No, like he gets crowned king. Thanks for nothing, dude. I'm Joan. I got you crowned. And then she gets captured by the British later on. She is captured in 1430. 1429 is her grand year. Siege of Orléans, success, ending 14 years since Agincourt of I don't want to say British dominance, but the tide in the favor of the British. She's wounded at the failed Siege of Paris in the fall of that year, September 8th of 1429. The next year, 1430, Joan is injured. Her attack fails one more time, and she is captured. And these people are Burgundians. They are fellow Frenchmen who are going to put her up to a anti-Charles VII court. Let's call it that best. Who don't want this Armagnac, Orleanist, whatever faction, etc. Why are they doing this? One reason, to illegitimize King Charles's crowning, right? Very, very simple. If we have Joan of Arc, we have captured her person. We have, habeas corpus. We have the body. We have the person. We have her in custody, and we can accuse her of whatever. We're going to accuse her of two things: heresy and wearing men's clothing. Seriously, those are the two kind of main things. If we can just say she's a bad guy, she's in league with the devil, she's a witch, whatever, then, well, Charles' crowning isn't legit, right? I guess it's not legit because she's a false prophetess, whatever kind of thing. That's what it's all about. The trial in the first session, February 21st, 1431. Do you swear to speak the truth and answer to such questions as are put to you? Joan. I do not know what you wish to examine me on. Perhaps you might ask such things that I would not tell. Will you swear to speak the truth upon the things you are asked concerning the faith, which you know? Concerning my father and my mother and what I have done, since I took the road to France, I will gladly swear to tell the truth. But concerning my revelations from God, these I have never told or revealed to anyone, save only to Charles my king. And I will not reveal them to save my head. End quote. What a boss. This girl is so freaking boss. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, she's 17 years old. And she has like the gravitas of like a 49-year-old queen, like who's been ruling the country for 20 years. She's amazing. Remember what it says, 10th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel. Do not prepare a defense beforehand. The Holy Spirit will give you the words. I mean, it's a great example. I encourage a lot of you to read the deposition of her trial, basically. I'm just reading snippets here. And we're not too far from being done, period. But it's fascinating stuff. From the third session, February 24th, 1431. This is the quote I started the class with. Beautiful quote. They're trying to trip her up. If she says she's in a state of grace, she's disgustingly presumptuous. How dare you claim that you know the state of your soul? Only God knows that. And if she says you're not, oh, well, you told us you're not. Well, you told us you're a false prophet. Do you know whether or not you are in God's grace? Joan, if I am not, May God put me there. And if I am, may God so keep me. I should be the saddest creature in the world if I knew I were not in his grace. She continues throughout these trials to attest to the veracity of her experiences. At the age of 12 or 13, she had, quote, had a voice from God to help and guide me. At first, she was very much afraid, but she added the voice was seldom heard without a light. She often heard the voice. She came to France. She details some of the, without revealing some of the secret contents that she says I won't reveal even to save my head. Joan as well, another beautiful thing. We as Catholics, obviously, in the Catholic Church, praise God. And the Catholic Church, the opponents of the Catholic Church often criticize her for this. It's about authority. It's about proper, think about almost like military command. Joan is beautiful in her story about propriety. No, I'm not going to tell you secrets. I'm not going to gossip. I'm not even at the risk of death. I will persevere to the end. If things are secret between me and God, or that I can only tell to my lawful king, who I helped crown, I will not reveal them otherwise. 8th session, March 12, 1431. Did not the angel fail you when you were taken prisoner? The questioning ended for this session with Joan being asked whether after hearing that revelation she felt she could no longer commit mortal sin. She replied, quote, I do not know, but in everything I commit myself to God. She is constantly responding, I don't want to say hedging her bets, I want to say with kind of like true holiness and avoiding that sin of presumption. Say, oh yeah, she claims, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure I might be this maiden in this myth going around, this legend. I always say myth does not mean false or true. Colloquially, we think about myths being false. Myth means sacred story. The myth of George Washington, it's not a fake story. It means the story built up around our first president, whatever. In the myth of the maiden that will come to save France, which is so hilarious, some attribute to Merlin. I have no idea how he got involved in the story. How did Excalibur, the Round Table, Merlin, how did that come in? I have no idea how that got involved. That sounds like a British conspiracy. We're sorry for killing Joan. She's awesome. We'll put Merlin in there. Anyways. Throughout the trial, Joan requests to hear Mass, even though it's being refused her. Promise me I'll get to hear Mass if I wear women's clothing. The Inquisitor. I promise you will hear Mass if you wear women's clothing. Joan. And what do you say if I promised our king and swore not to remove these clothes? Nonetheless, I say, make me a long black robe that touches the ground with no train and give it to me for Mass. That when I come back, I'll put on these clothes I'm wearing. She's dressing, I think, as well in these masculine clothes on the pragmatic level too. Again, remember that it would be harder to try to assault or attack her. And sadly, men tried to do that on the battlefield and in her cell. So she's wearing it as a matter of defending herself. Being more protected, wearing pants, wearing clothes, than wearing a dress for obvious reasons. But also, I think as a uniform, I'm a soldier. I'm a soldier of Christ. I'm fighting for the true king and God's authority on earth. And I'm in my battle fatigues. And again, she's, by all accounts, this beautiful young girl, very, very feminine, and such hyper-masculine militaristic qualities. Beautiful. It's like this true feminism. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful story too. We often think about feministic tropes being strained in our culture today. It's why do you make up fake stories when you have Joan of Arc? Make movies about her. It's amazing, right? You don't have to make anything up. Just tell her story. It's the most, do you want women empowerment, female equality, female leadership? Just do that story. It's all there, right? Oh, how dare you? But, religion, Catholicism, it's always like that. Her story is amazing. The sessions run as much as 15. On May 24th, 1431, she's taken to a scaffold and told she would be burned immediately unless she signs a document renouncing her visions and agreeing to stop wearing soldiers' clothing. In the face of this immediate execution, she agrees to give up the clothing. Fine, I won't dress as a soldier anymore. But only 4 days later, she's like, never mind, I take it back. Only those who have relapsed, that is, those who have once abjured their errors returned to them, could be condemned to death by a tribunal of the Inquisition delivered for death. So this is why they're going to kill her, because led to the scaffold, threaten her. She makes the confession. You're right. I'm guilty of dressing as a guy, and I won't do this anymore. I'll sign the document. Really becomes a huge sticking point for her not wearing this soldier outfit, soldier uniform. Only 4 days later, she's like, never mind, I'm going back to wearing this. That's seen by the Inquisition as now we can execute her. And they do. They do only 2 days later. March 24th, signs the document. 4 days later, never mind, take it back. I'm not gonna, save my, save my skin, literally. Think about the most gruesome thing. She's burned at the stake, her burning flesh. I'm not gonna try to avoid that just for the purpose of my life. My mission is to serve God.
Well, if she had just been naked, they worked her over for that, then.
She's definitely between a rock and a hard place, no question.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's on May 30th, 1431, which is her feast day. Again, Saint Joan of Arc, patroness of France. Do pray for us, please. May 30th, 1431, she's burned at the stake at the old marketplace in Rouen, and her ashes are thrown into the river, into the Seine. It's a huge turning point. We're basically done with the story. And I encourage you, I hope it's just like anything with this class. Let me just find my last sheet. My printer printed strangely and printed sheet number 11, my last page. Here it is. On the back of sheet number 5. Thanks, printer. Thanks for nothing. Remind me to take a baseball bat to my printer later. There's a famous scene, I think, in that movie Office Space when they clean out the equipment. They just beat up a bunch of old TVs. It sounds pretty cathartic. Page number 11 is at the end here. This is a turning point in this whole deal. Because, remember, the English Agincourt 1415 to the Siege of Orléans, Joan's great triumph, 1429, have been in control. Despite the rival coronation of Henry VI of England, this usurper, the French would say, in Notre Dame Cathedral in 1431, the very year she's burned at the stake, 4 years later, the Burgundians, the bad French guys, from Joan's perspective, signed the Treaty of Arras, abandoning their alliance with England. 22 years after Joan's death, the war ends with the French victory at the Battle of Castillon in 1453. The English are kicked out of France. Remember Joan's awesome quote, I don't know if God hates the English or not, but they're gonna leave. I know that. They're all gonna leave. Well, the guys who stay, they'll be dead. They're the dead guys who are on the battlefield, but everyone else will get kicked out. 24 years later, 24 years after her death, very soon after the end of the Battle of Castillon, her trial of rehabilitation takes place. And basically, the trial determines she was executed falsely. This is wrong. It was a crime against her.
Yeah.
The illegality of the foreign proceedings was made clear, and it speaks well for the sincerity of the new inquiry that could not be made without inflicting some degree of reproach upon both the King of France and Church at large, seeing that so great injustice had been done. And so, okay, they say this is, she was executed under false pretense, so we say she was murdered. And hence the kind of idea of again, I tread lightly using the word martyr. Martyrdom in the martyrs are the Christian heroes at the Colosseum who died in odium fide, in hatred of faith. Joan is, I think I made completely clear this whole episode how much I love her, how awesome I think she is. I just don't want to, what I love about being Catholic, I want to be very precise. I don't know what the church stands for her martyrdom. She's killed for political reasons, obviously, because they don't want her to be seen as a representative of God, which grants Charles VII, who we hate, we English guys, and the Burgundians, as we hate it as a false king. We're saying we want to rule England, or we want to rule France, excuse me. The cause for beatification starts being really ramped up in the 1800s, especially, remember, this Bishop of Orléans, Monsignor Dupanloup, D-U-P-A-N-L-O-U-P. D-U-P-A-N-L-O-U-P. Felix Dupanloup, the Bishop of Orléans, is pushing through. Miracles are confirmed. The process ends in a decree published by Pius X. Pope St. Pius X, April 11th, 1909. She's finally beatified. 1920. And so, let's end the episode in the most Catholic fashion possible. Anyone who prays the Litany of Saints, right? Invoking a saint, you ask them to indeed. Saint Joan of Arc, pray for us.